Good evening. We'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting for the Bedford Township Board of Zoning Appeals on November 6, 2023. We'll go ahead and start with introduction of my members. Off to my right.
Jody Rector, Planning and Zoning.
Phil Goldsmith, Township Attorney.
Dennis Kohler, Building Inspector.
Brad Helm, Planning Commission Representative.
Jake Lake, Vice Chair.
Kyle Dersch, Chairman.
Bob Potter, Member at Large.
Joe Gore, Township Trustee Representative.
Katrina Ingram, Planning and Zoning.
Thank you. If you could go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. All right, Ms. Rector, if we could with the roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Gore.
Here.
Mr. Potter.
Here.
Mr. Helm.
Here.
Mr. Lake.
Here.
Mr. Dersch.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. We look for a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
I'll make the motion to approve tonight's agenda.
All right, do we have Mr. Potter for support? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Curveball here from Ms. Rector. We're also looking for an approval for the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting schedule for 2024. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Ms. Rector?
If no one else has any comments regarding the meeting dates, I just want to make it aware that if it has one asterisk, it's the second Monday of the month due to a holiday. 2 asterisks are the second Monday due to the election next year. 3 asterisks are the third Monday due to election and a holiday, and 4 are due to the Monday deadline date because the government center will be closed. Just to make sure when the public sees those that they read the bottom once it's approved, to make sure that they notify those because there are those meeting deadline dates for the public hearing.
All right, thank you. Go ahead and look for a support for that motion. Or, excuse me, for that motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting schedule for 2024.
Thank you for support.
I'll support.
Mr. Potter, all in favor of approving the 2024 schedule? Say aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? All right, motion carried. We'll also look for an approval tonight for the minutes of the September 11th, 2023 meeting for those who were present.
Also move.
All right, motion for Mr. Potter, looking for support.
I'll support.
All right, thank you, Mr. Helm. All in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carried. Thank you. Moving down to item 7A, new business for tonight. We're looking for a motion to open the public hearing regarding the appeal of the Amy E. Weisler Trust on 8824 Seeker Road, looking for a plus or minus 56-foot front yard setback variance to construct an addition and attached garage to an existing dwelling.
I'll make the motion that we open that public hearing.
I'll support.
All right, motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Ms. Rector, if you could, please.
Yes, again, the applicant is Amy Weisler, 8824 Secor Road. Location is the same. Parcel number 5802-020-04200 on approximately 5 acres. Ag 2, secondary agricultural, rural residential. It's a plus or minus 50-foot front yard setback variance to construct an addition and an attached garage. The applicant is seeking a plus or minus 56-foot front yard setback variance off Secor Road to construct an addition and an attached garage to an existing dwelling, which is a prior legal non-conforming structure. In that, due to the age of the home, it is within the setback requirement. The subject property is 5 acres with 160 feet of frontage on Secor Road, and the existing dwelling has a current front yard setback of approximately 44 feet. Per Section 400-1800, Schedule of Regulations, in an Ag 2 district, secondary agricultural, rural residential, a front yard setback of 67 feet from the road right-of-way, 33 feet from the center of Secor Road, for a total of 100 feet from the center of the road is required. Thus, the request for a front yard setback variance of 56 feet. The applicant stated in their letter, the addition will provide first floor access to a bathroom and a bedroom as well as a garage for the property. The applicant further stated in the letter, the proposed location is due to the existing location of the well and septic and above-ground pool on the property. While the existing dwelling is a prior legal nonconforming structure and does not meet the required front yard setback, the variance request for the required front yard setback is to allow the addition and attached garage to encroach in the required front yard. It should be noted the proposed addition is located on the north side of the existing dwelling and does not reduce the prior legal nonconforming front yard setback from Secor Road. At this time, no letter or calls of objection have been received. However, the applicant did provide 2 letters of no objection. Should the request be granted, the variance required is a 56 front yard setback variance to construct an addition and an attached garage.
Thank you, Ms. Rector. Is there a figure to pull up or anything for that? I don't notice we didn't have anything up on the screen tonight. Okay, in the interim, if the applicant's here and would like to step up to the podium and state your name and address for the record and add anything to what Ms. Rector provided to us.
Good evening. I'm Amy Weisler, and this is my husband, Scott Weisler.
8824 Secor.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to add to what Ms. Rector provided to us?
Is there anything else?
No, the only thing of note is that the back of our house currently sits at 89 feet, so no matter what, we couldn't meet that and still have it attached.
Okay. Is there anyone else from the audience who'd like to come up and make a comment for the record on this specific agenda item? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and look for a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Support.
All right, all in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
You're welcome.
nays? All right, motion carried. Thank you. If you could, applicants, please,
They're trying to get it fixed so the items will come up on the screen.
Okay. Sorry, if you could step up here, please. I'm sure the board's got some additional questions for you that you can answer.
One question. I don't think I saw it in the write-up. What year was the house built?
I believe it was 1924.
Thanks.
All right, I'll ask the obvious question I think most of the board is wondering here is, I saw there's footers in the ground and construction started. Typically, we see this prior to construction starting. Is there any additional information we can get from maybe Dennis or the applicants on this?
I'd rather have them speak because I was just driving by and saw work getting done, so I stopped, but they would have better education on.
Right. May I bring up another person?
Yeah, if as long as he can come up and state his name and address for the record, he can go ahead and add to this.
Yes. This.
And they did come in and fill out an authorization to speak on their behalf as well, so he is authorized to speak on them.
Okay.
Jordan Gastrop. Is that all you need from me?
Oh, your addresses too, please, for the
My
record.
address? Personal address.
Business or whatever.
2268 Wells Road, Dundee, Michigan.
Thank you. You go ahead and add to the information there on the construction process and where we're at.
So as far as I was aware, I was using subcontractors. I thought they had pulled the permit previously, but there was miscommunication and job got started before I give approval. Therefore, footers were laid before I give the okay. So miscommunication, that's on my part.
Okay. Thank you.
So the construction was started before you saw the permit?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Typically you'd pull permits and you'd make sure it's just the subcontractor started before you gave them the go-ahead to start?
There was a subcontractor that was hiring out the footers, the foundation work, and he gave the okay before I give him the okay. So there was a lot of miscommunication beforehand.
How far along did we get? I mean, has lumber been started, or is it just the footers and the block?
Looks just like footers and a foundation block.
Yeah, just the footers in the block.
I guess For you, Dennis, is there any issue with inspections?
We'll just have them excavate it back up and show us what they did.
They also have pictures if that helps.
Okay,
do
it's
that.
one of our considerations is, where that status is in terms of that as well moving forward.
Yep.
But Dennis, it'll still be okay to, if they dig it up, according to whatever you require, you'll still
Correct.
be
We will
able
not want them to
see.
damage it to show it to us, but
Yeah.
we could verify the frost depth and see what they did to the best of our ability.
Yeah. As a township, do we carry any responsibility or liability when a contractor is building
You could
something?
say no, and they could tear out the footers in the foundation.
No, I mean,
Then
I mean when a home is built and our township representatives inspect different things, do we carry responsibility if down the road somebody finds out the work wasn't done correctly?
well, we go to court once in a while back in the day. Lately, we haven't been going to court, but it's usually the quality of the contractors. We're lucky enough to have good contractors that we don't have issues mainly. So when you say responsibility, the contractor's licensed, and they're the ones that are carrying their insurance and doing it per the code. So we're doing just minor inspections that the state requires, looking for the minimum code requirements. That's what we do.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you.
Looking for any additional questions from the board at this time on this item?
Mr. Chairman, just to refresh the recollection of the members, since this is a prior legal nonconforming structure, in other words, this structure was erected prior to the adoption of the Bedford Township zoning ordinance, and the structure, they seek to expand a prior legal nonconforming structure, they don't have to establish a practical difficulty. And what you would look at are public health safety issues. Is the sight line from the roadway interfered with? For instance, if it were on a corner lot and the erection of or adding on to a prior legal nonconforming structure were to interfere with sight line distances for traffic, you would take that into consideration. But in terms of the practical difficulty that you're used to dealing with, it's not a technical requirement when you're enlarging or expanding a prior legal nonconforming structure. So you look at it from a common sense perspective and a public health, safety, and welfare perspective.
Mr. Potter?
Just made a note to myself that a practical difficulty is septic right behind the house, so they couldn't go that direction anyway.
And that's worth noting in a motion. If someone were to make a motion to grant the variance, that's certainly worth noting that in addition to the expansion of a prior legal nonconforming structure, there is in fact a practical difficulty because this is in an area that the on-site sewage disposal system, septic tank, leach field, and you can't build on or over that. And you have to leave, the health department requires a space for a replacement system as far as that goes. So worth noting and worth putting in the motion.
Yeah, I think as the applicant alluded to, and from the figure that spatially to meet the setback requirement, it wouldn't even be attached to the house at that point. It'd be well into the backyard trying to put an addition on. But I agree, the septic tank is a good practical difficulty to consider moving forward with the layout of the lot. And I've drove past it on Sunday morning. I didn't see anything obvious. It's just the width of the lot. It's fitting into what's around it really at that point. And I think we saw something similar to this last year at a time of another non-conforming lot that was prior that we looked at an addition on.
No, I think it meets the common sense requirement. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't build an attachment behind your house and not attached to your house. I think position of the structure, in addition to all the other current things in the ground, wells, structures such as pools, etc. And then, obviously, it's prior legal non-conforming House was built in 1925, zoning ordinance came in 1976.
Most of the houses in the area also are within that setback.
Right.
Right, they're not asking for anything different than what the neighbors have.
Yeah, exactly. That whole section of Secor Road looks like it's,
Very close, correct.
Similar line.
So, I agree. I mean, there's plenty of practical difficulties. I just can't get over the hurdle of again, work was started again before permits and everything else were pulled. We had something earlier this year where a gentleman ordered a kit to build a barn, and he was granted a variance for one, but decided to go bigger before coming back to the board and actually started building lumber. Okay, and I'm steadfast on that. I voted no then, and I just think I mean, you have to get the permits and you have to go forward that route first.
I believe the owners had no knowledge of no permit at the time that I communicated with both of them. So it was not the owners that didn't have a permit. They assumed that permits had been pulled by their contractor.
An owner can pull a permit if the owner's going to do the work themselves, technically. Is that correct, Dennis? But if you hire a licensed contractor, licensed in the state of Michigan, it's the responsibility of the contractor that's going to be performing the work, and his or her subcontractors that will be performing work under the contract and the subcontracts to pull their permit. So I understand completely what you're saying, Joe, but in this case, based on what's been represented to you tonight, it would appear that it was not the fault of the owners. So it's something to consider.
thank you, Mr. Goldsmith. Mr. Potter?
I'd like to take a stab at a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance request for a plus or minus 56-foot front yard setback variance to construct an addition and attached garage to the home located at 8824 Secor Road, Lambertville, property number 5802-020-042-00. And I'd like to identify a practical difficulty that going off to the side as they intend to do, out to the side of the home as they intend to do, is really the only option, because going to the back of the home, there's a septic tank leach field system there, so it prevents any practical possibility of building on to the back of the home.
All right, looking for any additional friendly amendments or information that we'd like to add to this?
You might want to add in there, so long as the new construction does not encroach any further into the setback than the existing prior legal nonconforming structure.
Is that good with you,
Okay,
Mr. Potter?
that sounds good. Thank you.
I'd like to add a couple things, if that's okay, too. And I guess we'd also want to note that it is a prior legal nonconforming lot. So that is what's kind of driving this situation, as well as making sure we get the proper inspections and approvals from our township building inspector to move forward with construction as is and remaining, as well as any health department approvals that are necessary. I know we're adding a bedroom to an existing septic tank. We want to make sure that everyone's on board and okay with that process. Do you accept, Mr. Potter?
Yes. Yes, I do. Thank you.
All right.
Support.
All right. So we have a motion and support from Mr. Lake. I think we're ready to go ahead and take it to a vote.
Mr. Potter?
Aye.
Mr. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Helm?
Yes.
Mr. Gore?
Yes.
Mr. Dersch?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our next agenda item, 7B. We're going to go ahead and look for a motion to open the public hearing regarding the property at 633 Swiss Garden, Temperance, Michigan 48182. For several variances here we have listed. We'll let Ms. Rector get into that. Look for a motion.
So move.
Support.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Thank you. Ms. Rector, if you could, please.
Get my mic to work. Our apologies. They're still working on trying to get it up on the screen. Oh, they do have it on this one, just not, I can't see it over there. Okay, the applicant is Linda Folger and Terrence Dieters, 6333 Swiss Gardens, Temperance, Michigan. Parcel number 5802-620-00910 on .979 of an acre. R3 single-family residential. The variances requested are an additional plus or minus 950 square foot accessory building area, a variance of all the accessory buildings on site, a variance to allow one additional existing accessory building, a plus or minus 2 foot side yard setback variance for an existing pergola and shed, a plus or minus 2.5 foot setback variance, height variance for a fence for a portion of an existing 8.5 foot tall privacy fence, and to construct an additional approximately 72 feet of an 8.5 foot privacy fence, all to be located on the north side of the property within the rear yard. And they are requesting an interpretation of the ordinance language to permit the existing metal barnyard siding material to serve as a decorative fence in the front yard. On 9/21/2023, the Ordinance Enforcement Department received a complaint of construction without proper permits and/or inspections. In working with the Ordinance Department, Building Department, and the Planning Department, it was determined by the property was out of compliance, and the property owner shall either remove the non-compliant issues or submit and request all variances to maintain the property. The applicant determined to move forward and request the following variances to maintain the existing landscape layout of their property. A variance request to allow for an additional plus or minus 950 square foot of accessory buildings. Per section 400-1903, accessory buildings in an R3 single-family residential having more than 0.5 of an acre, a total of 2,500 cumulative and maximum square foot of accessory buildings, and a total of 2 are permitted. Accessories existing on site are a total of 3,447 total square foot. There is a 26 by 92 with a 14 by 26 lean-to. There is a 10 by 12 garden shed with a 5 by 12 lean-to connected to a pergola, which is 391 square feet, and a 10 by 12 outbuilding, which is considered a third accessory building. Therefore, a variance request is required for the existing additional plus or minus 950 square feet of accessory buildings and to permit the third accessory building labeled as the outbuilding additional garden shed. A variance for a plus or minus 2 foot side yard setback variance for an existing pergola and a shed, and a 2.5 foot setback for an existing pergola from the main building. Per section 400-1903, accessory buildings in an R3 single-family residential having more than the half acre requires 5 feet from a property line and 10 feet from any main building. As shown on the submitted plot plan, a 3-foot side yard setback is provided for the existing pergola and the existing garden shed, thus requiring a 2-foot side yard setback variance to maintain the existing structures. The plot plan also shows a setback of 7.5 feet between the main building, which is considered the dwelling, and the existing pergola, where 10 feet is required. Therefore, 2.5 foot setback is required to maintain the existing pergola. A variance for a 2.5 foot fence height variance for a portion of an existing 8.5 foot tall privacy fence, and to construct an additional 72 feet of 8.5 foot privacy fence along the north side of the property within the rear yard. As shown on the submitted plot plan and area, there is a portion of an existing 8.5 foot tall fence and a proposed area to install 72 feet, approximately 9 panels of 8.5 foot fencing. Per section 400-1912, fences in a single family residential district, fences within a side or rear yard shall not exceed 6 feet in height and shall not extend beyond the front building line or required front yard setback, whichever is greater. While the proposed location meets the intent of the ordinance as defined on the plot plan located on the north side of the property behind the front building line, ordinance permits 6 feet in height. Therefore, the 2.5-foot fence height variance for the existing fence and the proposed 9 additional panels to be installed. Request for an interpretation of the ordinance language to permit existing barn metal siding material to serve as decorative fencing in a front yard. Per section 419.12, fences state in a single-family residential district, fences within a front yard shall not exceed 3.5 feet in height and shall be restricted to decorative fences. Per section 400.201, construction of language defines fence decorative as a fence constructed of an ornamental material such as wrought iron, simulated iron, or brick or stone, or embellished wood picket fences or split rail fences. Ornamental fences do not include chain link fences with or without woven slats or wooden stockade style fences. The applicant has submitted photos of the existing barn metal siding located on the front yard to serve as fencing. The request from the applicant is to determine if such material is considered to be decorative as defined by the ordinance language to maintain the existing front yard quote-unquote fence material. The applicant has submitted a letter of concerns and request to continue to maintain the property. The applicant has also provided to the Planning Department a FOIA request from the Monroe County Sheriff's Office regarding several incident reports, and on 10/30/2023 requested a personal protection order from Judge Lohmeyer and was issued. The applicant has advised the Planning Department they would desire to encourage the board to visit the site and review all the existing structures and fencing, as in their opinion the property layout is not detrimental to the property or the surrounding area and provides privacy due to the fear of unwarranted retaliation and physical harm from the neighboring property. At this time, no letters or calls have been received from to the Planning Department, but the applicant did provide in the packet, we'll go down to that, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, it's a large packet. Several letters of no objection from the surrounding neighbors, and we did provide a map and layout with pictures of everything that's on the site. I can go back to any of the photos that you'd like me to. I'm just trying to find the map first. Maybe. So all the addresses highlighted were letters of no objection. The highlighted in orange is the subject property. And I believe the applicants are here. That is all I have.
All right, thank you. If the applicants are here and would like to come up and state your name and address for the record and add anything additional at this time.
Linda Folger.
Terrence Dieters.
6333 Swiss Garden.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add to what Ms. Rector provided us at this time?
Well, as far as just the privacy, we've had everything from our life threatened to Linda did not put in the report the vulgar language. She doesn't speak that way. And if you'd like me to paraphrase it, I will, but I don't think it's necessary. But the daughter has, truck drivers have got better language than she does, and it's totally unwarranted and unnecessary. We have 8 cameras that we know of pointing at us, one pointing directly into our bedroom window. I know that the law says you can have cameras to protect your property, but you have to be a blatant idiot to know that this is not pure harassment. Every time we move, somebody moves the camera so that it's pointing at us. No matter how long we make our fence, they move a camera down the road. We've had burnt crosses posted on our fence line to punching bags with Wilson's face on them. Everything you can imagine. We have a skeleton that is lit up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 12 foot tall with no arms, pointing right at our property with a spotlight on it all night long. We have harassment that you can't even imagine going on from these people. They are vile, terrible people, and we just want to be left alone. We haven't done anything to them. The metal fencing that Linda put up in their front yard was put there because one day we came out and she had just mulched her gardens. If any of you came out and seen our property, you would see that Linda's a master gardener, and our properties are, we could charge admission to see our properties and our buildings. But I came out one day and Amy was sitting on her riding lawnmower, going back and forth, pointing right at the fence, pointing her riding lawnmower right into Linda's gardens, blowing the grass and leaves into her garden that she had just finished mulching. I can go on all night long. How long do you want me to carry on this is up to you, but it's just, no people should have to put up with the harassment that we put up with. If you came out, you'd see that the pergola, unbeknownst to me, I had no clue that a pergola was considered square footage. That's
That it's a structure.
That it's a structure. I didn't think it was anything different than you went to Home Depot and put on your shed, put on your garden or your back porch as an ornament. It's, you know, it's there, so it counts as 400 square feet. And the setback, I have 14 inches of overhang on the trusses that go across for the pergola, and then the house has a foot of overhang, so it's really not that close, and it's nothing more than 2x6s that are 2 foot on center that are approaching close to the house.
They don't give you that 10-foot setback.
They don't give you, but it's just not, it's not 10 foot apart from eave to eave. And the fence is actually only 8 foot except for at the pergola. There's purlings that are on top of it that are, I think they're 8 inches, so we call it 8.5 just to be safe, because we don't want anybody to split any hairs about the uneven ground that we're actually going over the 8 foot. But for the most part, the fence is only 8 foot.
Okay. We appreciate that.
Pardon me?
So we appreciate the additional information. I want to open this up to if anyone else is in the audience and wants to come up and add any additional public comment to that, and then we'll move into board questions. And all right, if you could please come up and state your name and address for the record. We'll go ahead and wrap up the public comment here before we get back into some more detailed questions from the board.
Hi, everyone. I have a hard time hearing, so my son-in-law is here with me. He also lives in my home, in case I can't hear you. I'm amazed at these people.
Can you please state your name and address for the record?
My name is Judy Hullbarger, and I live at 6343 Swiss Garden, which is next door to Folger Dieters. And I'm here to state reasons why I disapprove of their variances. I got notes here because I didn't want to forget to tell you things that have happened. I've lived at this location for more than 50 years, have never had any disagreements with my neighbors on the property line or anything else. My son-in-law Josh and my daughter Amy have lived with me and never had problems with the neighbors either. This changed 4 years ago when Folger Dieters moved next door to me. They thought they could tell me what to do on my property. The first thing they wanted me to do was to remove the cameras that are placed around my entire property. Some were installed by my husband 16 years ago because we were having break-ins, and we felt safer with them. We felt more need to install cameras when Folger Dieters continued harassment against us and our animals. My son-in-law installed several more cameras for our protection and to prove we were doing nothing wrong. The township ordinance officers informed us that our cameras were legal and we were allowed to have them. They checked, they knew all about them, they looked at them. They say we could look through their bedroom window. They have a black film all over all their windows on that side. I don't know if they think we're the FBI or what, that we can see through them. We can't. I also have a fence there. The cameras look this way, but they can't see into their bedroom or any other room in their house. We were shown, after they complained about our cameras, we were shown some pictures by the ordinance officers of their backyard. They also have cameras.
Excuse me.
Right down
Excuse me.
their driveway.
Ma'am, I'm going to stop you real quick. Please address the board. We're the ones that need the information.
Oh, okay,
We're gonna be
I'm
waiting
sorry,
for
I'm
this.
sorry. They have them down their driveway towards their backyard. I guess they think they can have cameras, but I can't. We have also, wait a minute. Go to the next page. Today I'm requesting that Mr. Folger, excuse me, Ms. Dieters adhere to the ordinance rules as they are written, just as I have done and others have done. They seem to want their way and think everyone else should abide by their rules. I understand there's legitimate reasons for exceptions to rules, but I don't feel these reasons exist for my neighbors. Why are there rules if some people think they can ignore them and do what they please? It appears to me that they like all the drama. I just want them to leave me alone and mind their own business. I called the township on September 19th, because Ms. Folger has installed approximately 30 feet of mismatched shutters, windows, and doors to the end of an 8.5-foot high, 100-foot long privacy screen, which is considered a fence. She was using it as a fence along my split rail fence. Ordinance officers said the neighbors would be told to remove everything since it could not be used as a fence. And I have pictures of this if anybody would like to see them, if you'd like to pass them down. That's what she put up. I already had to put a second privacy fence in next to the back of the side of my house to keep the dogs from going on our side of the yard next to their property. When my son-in-law and daughter's dogs went next to her yard, she teased them so they would bark at her. What woman in their 60s does that? Sounds like something a teenager would do. As the ordinance officers looked around the property line, they said the neighbor's privacy screen could only be 6 foot tall and the good side had to face my yard. They also said there were only 2 feet distance between the shed that had been moved from their backyard and put along my split rail fence. It's supposed to be 5 feet from my fence. The ordinance officers also checked my fence, which was made to look like a trellis. It was 6 foot on each end, but it was 7 foot in the center. And they said it needed to be shortened to 6 foot, and the good side should face the neighbor's yard with the post facing my yard. My daughter took 16 5-foot-long sections apart and made them into 6-foot-high fencing. It was installed with the good side facing the neighbors and the post facing my yard. She took off work to do that, but she installed it within 1 week. Okay, here's their request and why I object to them. Originally, the screen that they put up, they were only approved to have one 8-foot-tall section at 10 foot long. Since then, they just went on their own and added 10 more 8.5-foot-tall sections. Each section is 10 foot wide. All 11 are connected to one another. It makes them a total of 110 feet in length. The good side faces their side. There's no reason for an 8.5-foot-tall privacy screen, which they call it, when none of us can see over a 6-foot fence. I think they should keep the height at 6 feet with the good side facing my yard. Township ordinance should be honored since my fence was changed to meet the ordinance rules. Also, their variance to add an additional 72 feet to that 110 shouldn't be allowed. Why should I have to obey the law? They don't. I don't believe that people should get variances because they choose to do something and think, well, if I don't get away, don't get to keep this, I'll just go to the variance board and have them approve it for me. So they do what they darn well want. Like I said, I had to replace my fence, and anytime anybody wants to see it, that's exactly how I did it, the way it's supposed to be. The shed that they're talking about, it was relocated from another side of their property, and this has been probably a year ago or maybe around there. 2019? 2019.
I have pictures we didn't bring it. We had
Yeah.
30 of them, but.
Yeah. And they were told that that they had to have it 5 feet away by the ordinance department. They took it upon themselves to move it and only have it 2 feet away from my split rail fence. They chose not to comply with the township rules, and they did what they pleased. They should have to comply since they knew that was the right thing to do, and they chose not to do it. The other variance, they put metal barn siding material that they use as a decorative fencing in the front yard and extends beyond the front of their house. The metal barn siding is put in back of their plants and bushes. There's a space between my split rail and their metal siding. That's empty. Miss Folger uses that space to dump her yard waste and leaves instead of disposing of them in the proper way. So she fills it with that. We installed the black plastic tarp on the rails so the waste did not come into my front yard. The township said it had to be removed because we had rivets, so we removed it. So now she blows all her leaves in between, and of course, some of that comes through my fence. I don't know why she thinks she can do that, but the fifth thing is they didn't apply for permits to add on to their barn or garage or whatever they call that. It's a real long building that they put in. That decision lies with the township, but I think they should be fined for having no permit because I think darn well they knew about it. That is my opinion, but that's how I feel. So like I said, it's been happening for 4 years. Never had a problem before, and you can check with the township. Never had anything.
All right.
So I just don't want them to be able to keep that fence. Not fair.
I'd like to say something too, if I may.
If you could, please state your name and address for the record as well.
Yes, sir. My name is Josh Warner, a resident of 6343 Swiss Garden Road. I am married to Amy Warner and honored to be Judy Hullebarger's son-in-law. Today I'd like to share in part a letter I sent to the Monroe County Sheriff on September 27th, 2023, addressing recent incidents and false allegations made against us by Dieter and Folger. Dear Sheriff Goodnow, I hope this letter finds you well. I'm writing to express my deep concerns regarding a recent incident involving my mother-in-law, Judy Hullebarger. It appears that Judy was unjustly accused of picking a neighbor's flower by the Dieter Folger family. Before I delve into the recent incident, I'd like to provide you with some context. In 2019, new neighbors moved in next door to us, the Dieter Folger family. While I might not have precise dates, I can recall several incidents that have occurred since then, which have resulted in unnecessary police involvement. In 2019, Terry Dieter ripped no trespassing and dog on premises signs off Judy Hullebarger's fence and anchored a hose to her fence post. Police were called, and Judy provided a receipt demonstrating her ownership of the fence. In 2020, the Dieter Folger family raised concerns about our security cameras to the township, but they were determined to be compliant with regulations. On May 2nd, 2021, the Dieter family called the police when we mowed the lawn, alleging a few blades of grass crossed over onto their property line. Dieter additionally used derogatory language towards my wife that I won't repeat here. On May 4th, 2021, another police call ensued when a cloth blew over, with Dieter Folger family requesting access to our cameras. It was determined that the incident was solely due to weather conditions. On May 23rd, 2022, the Dieter family raised concerns about our cameras again, citing concerns about new neighbors and their children. I spoke to an officer, providing camera views to alleviate their concerns. Folger deliberately misled the officer into believing that I was observing her tenant's children in the adjacent house. I want to make it clear that I am not guilty of any wrongdoing in this matter. The recent incident involving Judy, who was accused of picking the neighbor's flower, is deeply troubling. Judy Hullebarger is 79 years old, is one of the kindest individuals I know, and his repeated false accusations are causing her undue distress. I'm writing you to seek clarification on what the law stipulates regarding false accusations. The Dieter Folger family has levied such accusations against us on multiple occasions, causing unnecessary strain. I kindly request your assistance in addressing these concerns and ensuring that justice prevails. We believe in the importance of a peaceful and harmonious neighborhood and wish to resolve these issues amicably. Respectfully, Joshua Werner. That's the end of the letter. At that time, they were told me to seek legal counsel, and I was granted access to the police body cam footage and also the police reports that they filed against us. So, in conclusion, Dieter and Folger often portray themselves as innocent and trustworthy individuals when interacting with people in positions of authority. However, the reality couldn't be further from the truth. They have repeatedly fabricated untruths in their interactions with the township and the police, as evident in the letter sent on September 27, 2023, and the recent personal protection order allegations filed on October 30th, 2023. Ironically, this was submitted by Folger 1 week before this meeting. These baseless accusations will be contested, as there is no justifiable reason for such an absurd order. Their ongoing actions demonstrate a pattern of malicious behavior towards me, my wife, and Judy. I'd like to express my gratitude to the township for taking time to consider my statement. Our lives have been turned into a living nightmare ever since Dieter and Folger moved into the neighborhood 4 years ago. I have faith in your judgment and believe that you'll make the right decision. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to add to the public hearing for this agenda topic? All right, sir, if you could, please state.
Oh, should I say? Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I know, you're fine.
I know,
You're
thank
fine.
you, thank you.
All right, sir, if you could, please state your name and address for the record and your
My name is
comments.
Matthew Glavin. I live at 6325 Swiss Garden. I'm the opposite neighbor to them. I moved there approximately 2 years ago. I have 2 little kids and my wife, and they're literally a grandparent to my children. They're over all the time, never had an issue. We go over there, nice people. Like, they took a chance on us. I have a 2 and a 4-year-old.
No, he's the renter that just moved in.
Excuse me, sir. Please, you had your time. Thank
So,
you.
I mean, you'll see her every day after a storm picking up sticks outside in her front yard. It's just immaculate all the time. Like, go check it out yourself. I don't know them. I'm not going to sit here and talk any downgrading to anybody. I'm just here to say that these people have been extraordinary to my family. They always go above and beyond for us. Yeah, we may rent from her, but most landlords, people don't even want to even look that out of their eye besides just hand them the rent check and go about their business. You know, 90% of them are like that. I've been in that position where I've rented somebody that, here, I'll see you in 30 days. She goes outside, my kids are going, can we go out and see Terry? Can we go out and see Linda? Like, that's the kind of neighbor you want, in my opinion. It's somebody that's going to be there for you, regardless. I mean, I can call them any waking minute of the day, regardless it is. There's been a time where we've called them at 9 o'clock at night because we got to rush my daughter and be like, you mind watching my son for us? Who do you trust to watch your kids like that? On drop of a dime, I trust them with everything I have. It's just, don't want to see them being smacked around verbally. So that's why I'm standing up right now. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we've had your comments. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come up and state their name and address for the record and add any additional comments to the public hearing? If you, here's your chance. This is the one and only time we'll have the public hearing open. All right, I'll be looking for a motion from the board to go ahead and close the public hearing for this agenda item.
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Gore, for support. Mr. Helm will give him that one. All in favor of closing the public hearing for this agenda item, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to board questions. If the applicants could please step back up to the podium, we'll go ahead and let the board ask you some questions at this time. Again, a reminder, the public hearing is closed. This means we will not be accepting any more comments from the audience at this time.
Mr. Chair, if you want to guide me to where, once you start discussion, if you want me to tell me which pages you want to look at or photos or anything, I'll do my best to get to that photo so you can have a visual, and then the public can have a visual as well.
Thank you, and I think the way it's sectioned off here, I'd like to approach the variances as these groups, if the board's okay with that. Probably general questions up front, and then we'll have to dive into each item a little more closely as we move through this.
And that was going to be my question to Phil. Do we want to, each separate variance request, probably do a separate motion instead of putting them all into one?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Deal with each request separately. That way you don't confuse them and it's clear.
We got about 5, I think, on the list if I'm on my.
Yes, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
I see 6, but Ms. Rector grouped them into 4 sections. I was looking at those 4.
We got 6?
Yeah.
I missed something here.
9.
I've got the.
If you want my
Well, the
input,
one's an
I would
interpretation
Ms.
begin
Rector.
with
ordinance.
the overall square footage, because I'm just going to use the example of the first section. The 950 square foot of accessory buildings, if you determine to not allow the third one, then you would deduct the 120 of that square footage off of it, because then that accessory building would not need the additional 950. It would be then the 830. If you do not allow the third accessory building, where I have it broke down. The first one, you have the barn, which is the garage with the lean-to, and then you have the shed with the pergola, and then you have the additional shed of 120. So they need a variance to allow 3 structures because they're only permitted 2, and they have over 950 square feet of the permitted 2,500. So if you don't allow, I would discuss it together, because if you don't allow it, then the square footage would change, and we want to make sure that whatever the variances are granted are for what they have, not to allow anything additional at this point.
All right.
That's my food for thought.
I'm good with that. We'll take it piece by piece and work through it. Mr. Lake, I think he had his hand
Yeah,
up
we go ahead
first.
first. So we're not duplicating.
We've got, mind if I steal your sheet, please? Thank you. We've got 3 buildings we're talking about, right? There's the garage, then there's a garden shed, and then an outbuilding, I believe.
Correct.
That's correct, yes.
The original barn or garage that's out there, that's 23, almost call it 2,400 square feet approximately.
Correct.
When was that built?
That started in 2019
With a permit.
with a permit, and at that point, I made it 26 by 64, and then last year, I went in and got another permit to add on to another 28 feet to make it a total of 92 feet long, which would have been 2,400, just under 2,400 square feet. The property always had the other 2 outbuildings. I just tore the original little garage that limited us. We didn't have access to our backyard because of where it was at. So I tore it down and built a new one. So we always had those 2 buildings, and I didn't know that it would be a big deal to have that extra one, but that's They were existing buildings. The other two were existing buildings. The one, we just moved it over to the fence because we were already starting to have issues and just put it over there to block the view.
Plus it went over, it was where we were going to put the garage back then. So that was in 2019, and so that's how it got moved to the other side of the property.
And it is 3 feet from the fence. It's not 2 feet from the fence. And I thought that's what the setback was 3 feet. When I had our contractor put it there, I thought the setback was 3 feet, and he moved it over there. Our fence line starts at the road. Their fence is 6 inches into their property at the road. So their fence is 6 inches safe at the road. Our lot is 600 feet deep, but at the back end of our property, their fence is 2 feet into our property. So if you take visualize a line from the back of our property, their fence is 2 feet into our property to the front yard, they're only 6 inches safe. So where's the lot line? So I know that we're 3 feet, and that's what I thought was the variance at the time, but didn't know that it was 5 feet, because I surely wouldn't have started there.
Plus, when we put the garage on, I was not aware of that there's a special square footage rule. I guess if someone would have come out after we had already done the first part of the garage with the 2 buildings already existing, that when we asked for the 28 feet, then I thought, well, gosh, if there is this thing with the square footage, then maybe somebody should have said that, well, you know, you have this already existing, you have these 2 buildings. Now, if you add this 28 feet, you're going to be over what the allotment is supposed to be. So again, that was unbeknownst to us.
And I will say, one of the ordinance officers was at our property on an earlier complaint when we first built the pergola and put up the panels right by our house, and said it was fine. There was nothing wrong with it.
And that was,
so we just thought it was fine.
That was Officer Sadie, and if she had told us then that what we had done was not right, then we would have never continued.
We would never put more panels up.
No.
But and I don't know if you want me to digress into any of the other stuff, but that's where we're at.
We'll have some additional questions here. Ms. Rector, please.
I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing.
I'm sure we'll have some additional questions for you. We're just trying to work through this in a way that we understand exactly how we got here.
Yeah.
Ms. Rector, if you could, please.
And I'll just say that keep in mind that I think the applicant's previous comment was, too, that they didn't understand that a lean-to, which is attached to a structure, is also considered part of the cumulative amount of accessory buildings. So you have a 14 by 26, 364 square foot of lean-to on the garage, and you have a 60 square foot of lean-to on the 120-foot garden shed, and 390 square foot with the pergola, which they were not aware of was considered accessory structures. So if you keep that in mind with the 2,392 and the 120 and the 120, it probably was determined when they came out for the accessory building for the large structure, probably was at that close proximity of the 2,500 square feet. So anybody that went out on an inspection, I can't speak on that because I don't know if it was the building official or if it was another inspector. I did not look at that permit, but just keep in mind that they wouldn't have thrown a red flag as a township to tell them without that knowing that those other accessory structures were in place for that.
We didn't maliciously try to deceive anyone.
So if I understand this correctly, the lean-tos were added after construction.
Correct. We did the original pole barn. We demolished the garage, built a pole barn. We put an addition to the pole barn, which then I thought was in compliance with square footage. So sometimes there's sheds not shown on site plans. I'm not sure if it was shown or not shown, but I usually add up all the square footages of all the buildings and look at the number of buildings before I issue. Their yard is quite deep, and I think that back shed is back far enough where even if we're doing inspections, we might not even have noticed where that back shed is. So these are strict interpretations of the ordinance, and that's same as the pergola. The pergola came afterwards, And that's my interpretation that it is a structure, because it has a roof system and a wall system. So it's not a fence, but it's not a garage, but yet it's a structure. So then my strict interpretation of a pergola is I need a square footage of accessory structures.
Does something like that require a building permit typically?
Yes, normally it would do a building permit. The same thing with the sheds. The sheds under 200 square feet do not require a permit. So them moving a shed from one location to another normally would not involve our department. So that also happened. I think they got it set where.
Yeah, the one shed was a surprise to us. It was covered in brush when we bought the place. We didn't even know it was there.
And anybody that came out, because we have big pine trees back there, a lot of the branches were hanging low.
Yeah,
and so a lot of people didn't even know it was even out there. It just
Yeah.
came with the property back.
And I drove by on Sunday morning, and it's very difficult to see anything from the street behind the house. The way it's situated with the pine trees and the side yard, it's impossible almost to see the backyard.
Correct.
So for timeline purposes, I think we understand now that the lean-tos and the pergolas came afterwards, and we were close, if not there, at the square footage when the barn was built.
I think it answers all my questions for now. Yep.
Mr. Gore, I know you had some questions down there. I don't know if
No, I got a lot of the answers on the square footage. I'll have some questions on a couple of the other variances. I understand the issue with putting on the pergolas and everything like that, not knowing that it added to the square footage of the property or to the accessory buildings. And there was two that were already on site before you even bought the property. And I don't know if a contractor would know that there's square footage requirements or not if they built the garage. That I don't know. Or should they have known?
Well, the contractor should, yes. Just experience, but the homeowner would not.
The homeowner would not, but the contractor would. Okay. I mean,
And I think we answered that question. Homeowners put up the pergola. You guys put up the.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
He asked if you put up the pergola. Yes, he
Yeah,
did.
I put up the pergola, yeah.
We did.
Yeah, we did.
Is the pergola, they're attached to?
The garden
The
shed.
garden shed. So if the pergola was unattached, would that,
It would be another number, another building. It would be separate.
it would be, so a pergola, like I said, if you go to Lowe's and buy a pergola and put it in your backyard, that's considered another building? Or
Over 200 square feet, you should come and see my department.
are you, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Take a note real quick.
We'll be getting a phone call tomorrow morning.
I don't know what you're talking about.
And that's news to me. I guess I would never consider that, so I definitely take that as...
Never would have thought a pergola was yeah.
The structure.
Okay.
Well, I never thought it was a structure, nor when Dennis came out, he informed us, first of all, that it is a structure, and second of all, the wood going across, which is done for decorative purposes for the way I look at it, but he says it's a roof.
You're usually breaking the sun.
And-
And often the sun then turns into a roof and it's a building.
But if you
So
ever
it's
sat
down.
out there and saw how much sun it really cuts out, it's very little. But
Or
but
when it's
again,
raining.
but again, that was news to us that it was considered a roof. Because when the tax people came out and saw my lean-to on the garden shed, which was just done for decorative purposes, I said, I get taxed on that, and they go, yeah, because it's a roof. And I go, okay. And he looked at the pergola, and the two tax people said, if that had a roof on it, you'd be taxed on that. And I'm going, well, good. I'm glad I don't have a roof. Now, fast forward, and now I find out it's called a roof. So it's been a learning experience.
Has anybody on either side paid for a survey to have the property actual survey? Because I know back in the day when I was working the road, I've been to 100 of these property line disputes and neighbor disputes, and they're enough to drive you crazy.
Yes.
And the first thing I told them, well, has the property been surveyed? If they say no, well, get it surveyed, then come back to us.
It was surveyed in 2019. Due to all the cameras that I kept noticing kept popping up, we were going to put a 6-foot fence, and we did have it surveyed, and they put the pins in. But then I realized the 6-foot fence is not going to block out any of the cameras. So then you fast forward to what Terry spoke of earlier, that the neighbors then decided that they were going to have their fence surveyed, because over the 4 years, a couple times a year, no matter where I am, because yes, I am a master gardener and I work in my garden and I do it for a living. And I've been approached many times going, you know, that's our property, you know, that's our property. And so hence this last time, Judy and her daughter Amy came around the one fence when I was moving a plant and said, you know, Miss Linda, you can plant that plant there, but you know, that's our property. And you're going to be hearing from somebody, and you're not going to like who you're going to be hearing from, and you're not going to like what they're going to have to say.
We can't get into, this is not a court of law.
Okay.
We're not having
All right, I'm sorry.
PPO.
Okay,
We're not
so
going to
anyways-
solve any legal problems. We're here for the variance.
Okay, so anyways, so it was surveyed. It was discovered that they have 6 inches from on our side, and you go back to the back, and they have 2 feet of their fence on our property,
So they're 2 feet over into our property.
where the chain link fence is in the backyard.
Again, that'll probably have to be something settled in court at a later time.
Right.
It will be.
And that's not an issue right here.
I guess for our knowledge, for the setbacks, sorry, Mr. Gore,
all right.
is it were they measured off the fence, or were they measured off the property line, or where are we at in terms of the setbacks?
We go by what the applicant has provided us, and they measured from where they believe their property is and then to their fence line. We don't actually do defined measurements for variance.
But the survey markers and stakes are out there in the 4 corners?
Mm-hmm. Well, you can see the one at the street, the pin, the one at the back. They went out and removed the stakes that were standing up so you could actually see where the 2 foot was, and they covered it all up and buried everything. So anybody that went back there to see where the new pin is that their surveyor put in, you wouldn't be able to see it.
We didn't check to see if they pulled the pin out or not, but
And that's not,
I know exactly where it belongs.
because we did measure it.
The surveyor told us.
So for the board members, the 950 square foot, if that's what we're still on, accessory building variance, what are we coming up with for practical difficulties?
I'm thinking there's
Not-
some.
Yeah, I am struggling with some of that on these variance requests here.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you were briefed to this information in this process. So one of our determinations up here is a practical difficulty and the merits behind why you're requesting these variances that aren't self-created hardships, and generally not financial in terms either. For example, what drove the need for 3 accessory buildings? A lot of times we might see an existing garage or something that was out there that couldn't be torn down or, had some merit to keeping. In these instances, this is what we're looking for to make these decisions on how to proceed with these variances. Mr. Goldsmith, if you want to add anything to help get some wheels turning up here, I think that's the impasse that we're at right now with several of these questions.
I think you've defined it well, what a practical difficulty is. As you know, some folks come in and ask for an accessory building that may exceed the ground floor square footage of the home because they want to store items inside, such as a motor home or a travel trailer or classic cars or things of that nature. First and foremost, when you're in either in an ag or a residential zoning district, you want to make sure that the applicant is informed that a business cannot be conducted, especially in a residential zoning district, from an accessory building. Caution them in that regard that it has to be used for personal purposes only. So I think you've you've defined it very well in terms of what could possibly constitute a practical difficulty. Usually it's storage, size of the lot, width of the lot, depth of the lot, and whether it, I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, thank you. I said I have a couple ideas, not necessary for the accessory buildings. I don't know if anyone else on the board has any thoughts on these couple items in terms of square footage, number of buildings, and potentially the setback variances we're looking at up front. Mr. Potter?
Yes. First off, I'd like to thank Olger and Dieter. My wife and I came out for allowing my wife and I onto your property to take a look and see what's going on and as regards to the variance requests. It was very nice of you. Personally, I don't have any problems with, now that I'm starting to get a better understanding of why things are done and why things are the way they are, I don't have a problem with what's been done or what's being requested it hasn't been done yet, i.e. the fence. But I don't know what the practical difficulty would be. I look back in our May meeting, we had a situation where somebody asked for a variance for a taller than allowed fence in their backyard for a very similar reason, and we did grant that variance request, but unfortunately the minutes didn't indicate what the practical difficulty is. So
I think, and I remember, I know exactly what you're talking about, Mr. Potter. I thought it had something to do with privacy and a pool.
Yeah, very, very similar.
Yeah.
But if it's okay, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion on this. As I understand, we're making a motion on each of these 4 items.
Yes.
Minimum 4, I think, could be up to 6, depending on how the motion's structured.
Well, I'll try.
I would say if you're going to finish up discussion on the accessory buildings, I would encourage that motion to be made and then move forward with the next request and have discussion and then make those motions as you move forward, just so they're clear on each individual request.
And just for the applicants, do you understand where we're at with the process in terms of practical difficulties and the merits of granting the variance or not granting it? I sense some confusion. I just want to make sure. We understand, even if it sounds like a really good idea on paper, we can't just grant it without there being a legitimate reason, and this goes back to the Michigan State statute and law that we have to abide by.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we're at with the practical difficulty, is something that's not self-created, and how we can move forward with this.
So you're just trying to decide if it makes common sense to go forward with our request?
It's not a common sense approach. It has to be, a factual reason.
Well, that too.
Decision.
Part of the square footage that we're looking at for accessory structures, they're claiming is a pergola, which is not a roof.
Right.
So we're really asking for a variance on something that I'm interpreting as being a roof. So that's
Yeah, and
part
I
of the
think that opens up.
structure.
So if you take
What I'm
off
saying
the
is
pergola, they're within the, they still don't get to the 900.
No, it's.
Okay.
I think if you look at the pergola, and then also, kind of going to the 2 buildings, right, the 2 sheds, both of them under 200 feet, none of which would require a permit, right? And those were pre-existing. Those were already on the property,
Yes.
one unknown.
Yep.
So, if you go out there as a building inspector to look at the garage, which was permitted, right, and you don't notice those, how do you know if you're wrong? How do you know if you're getting the right amount of square footage for that particular barn, right? So I think that could have been an opportunity. And then when you also talk about the pergola, as far as, is it really a roof? By law it is, but is it really? Is it protecting you or shielding you from water?
I wouldn't sit out under a pergola if it was raining.
Or snowing.
So those are some practical difficulties, I think, right? Circumstance on the 2 smaller sheds that were, not requiring permits, and if not known at the time, and the building inspector comes out, does not see those or notice those and count those in the total square footage, how is the property owner supposed to know?
Correct.
So those are maybe two.
I guess, well, I have one more question in terms of building permits. Is the lean-to on the barn, was that a part of the addition that was put on, or was that a separate permit, or how did we get to the lean-to? Because that's over 200 square foot.
Lean-to on the barn is something that he put up after the building permit for the addition.
Yeah, after the barn was done, I've had this lean-to in storage for the last 35 years, and a lot of times I have a barn full of very valuable antique cars. I restore antique cars for a living. My shop is on Swiss Garden. I've been there for 35 years on Swiss Garden, restoring antique and classic cars. It used to be Angels and Son Lawnmower Shop years ago. But anyhow, I have a large collection of very valuable cars. And if it's raining outside and I'm working on a car and at home playing with it, it's nice to be able to just push it out the back door and not have to worry about it rain. And that lean-to was on my building down the street when I bought it, and I took it down and I've been storing it ever since. And I got the bright idea one morning that would really be nice on the back of the barn, just to have a place to push my cars outside when I'm working on one of the other ones. Because my garage is still about half the size I'd like it to be, because I have a lot of cars.
And truly, that's the only square footage that we really should be, in my mind, that's the actual variance.
And so it's tight in my building, and so the lean-to was like a saving grace on a rainy day, and I put it up one day. I thought it was a lean-to. I thought it was an awning. I didn't know awnings were
lean-tos
were an issue.
Yeah, and looking at the size of the barn, we are at the max square footage for the property, essentially, without a variance, before adding that lean-to onto it.
Well, the barn is 2,400 square feet, right?
Yeah, and 2,500 is the allowable for that lot size and that zoning. So, Mr. Potter, if you're still ready to make a motion, I think the board's willing to entertain it on this first item.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance request to allow an additional 950 square feet of accessory buildings, and also allow the 3 accessory buildings instead of the required 2. So that'd be a variance of 1 accessory building on the property location 6333 Swiss Garden, Temperance, Michigan, property number 5802 620 00910. And I will accept friendly amendments with regards to practical difficulty.
I'm just going to make one amendment, and it's not really to the practical difficulty, but just be stated that the accessory buildings cannot be used as a business.
Okay.
And they're
add
not.
something in there about accessory buildings not being used as a business. And also,
They're not.
we should be able to put something in there about no further construction of anything that could be constructed.
Garage at home is my personal stuff. It's not custom clients.
Understood.
That's okay.
As anything that can be construed as additional accessory buildings or adding on to any of the existing structures.
You're just saying kind of a moratorium on anything with a roof. in
Yeah,
the backyard.
I think what you're going for is, regardless of whether or not it requires a building permit, we're asking 3 is the limit, and the square footage that's on the property is the limit. Is that fair, Mr. Goldsmith?
Yes, that's fair. So if there's support for this motion, and if the variance is granted, basically what you're saying is what is there now would be the maximum that would be allowed, period.
That's correct.
Okay. in terms of building structures.
Yeah, roof area, accessory buildings, etc. I think we're still looking for kind of a practical difficulty on this, on moving forward to support and bring it to a vote.
I know that was discussed, but I guess, I don't know,
Do you want me to
having problems
reiterate
putting
the
that, yes.
practical? Okay, so one of my practical, I'll give you two of the practical difficulties I looked at here. One was the pergola not really providing adequate shelter, right? So would not considered as a part of the square footage with the accessory buildings. The two additional buildings that are under 200 square feet, those are not permit required buildings. So therefore, if the building inspector doesn't have to go out and notice those, if he goes out to inspect the barn that was constructed and not noticing those, not considering those in total square footage, unbeknownst to the homeowner at the time. So those would be two practical difficulties that I saw for this particular case.
Okay.
Okay. I accept that, thank you.
I think the only thing I'd like to consider adding to this, if Mr. Potter's okay with it, is making sure that we do get the required inspections on the lean-to addition that were done to the barn and make sure that it's compliant with
A building permit.
Yeah.
A
building permit and inspections that are required to make sure it's compliant with the building code and all good things of that nature.
Okay, thank you, I accept that. Appreciate the help.
Do we get a second or just
I
amendment?
was making sure you had everything down before we,
I think,
for support.
Trina, are you good? Yep. Okay.
Okay, I think we're going ahead and look for support to bring this to a vote.
Support.
Mr. Lake with support. Ms. Rector, if you could, with the vote, please.
Yes. Mr. Potter?
Aye.
Mr. Lake?
Yes.
Mr. Helm?
Yes.
Mr. Gore?
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Lake, for the practical difficulties, because until then, I was a no. So.
Mr. Dersch?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and move past the size of the accessory buildings and the number of accessory buildings, and we're going to move into setback variances regarding the existing pergola and from the main building and the property line on the side yard. That'll be the next one we'll take a look at.
We're going to consider both of those variance requests as one motion then for the pergola?
We can split them if we feel it's necessary.
No, I don't think it's necessary.
We can consider it as one.
I want to clarify.
And I know, again, for your information to the applicants, yeah, it's a wood structure, it's open air, but it's still a building code, fire code issue, having an adjacent structure. And any, adjacent structures are 10 feet minimum. If I'm not mistaken, on any properties that we have, we require that setback from a building code and a fire safety standpoint.
10 feet from a main building to an accessory structure. 5 feet is what the setback is for zoning. The building code looks at 3 feet before we start worrying about exterior wall ratings. And again, is it a wall and is it a roof? So that's the other thing that.
It's basically
Exactly.
a post.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think we're kind of in the same, we'll call it gray area that we are with accessory buildings with the pergola and square footages.
I mean, again, if
One of the things too with the shed, the garden shed, our lot is really narrow. It's only 70 feet wide. And that lean-to that's on that lot, there's a driveway that goes around to go to the back building. I mean, literally, we don't have 2 more feet on that shed. It's just like
Width of the lot.
tight.
Which one was moved to the property
the
line?
garden shed,
And then was a pergola installed on that or no?
yes,
it's
the
a-
pergola was then, the shed was
Shed's
put
actually
there,
to the left there. as
and
you
then the
look back
pergola
there.
was added.
The picture.
Okay.
Okay, so the
I was
pergola
just
is
saying,
attached
go
to
to
the
another
shed.
picture.
So when
I
the,
don't think I have it close enough.
Right there.
There's,
there.
that's the
Shed.
garden.
There, so the driveway is right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah, the overhang and the driveway line right up.
Yeah, it's
So
like,
if they were to move that 2 feet off the property line more to make
Be
it
closer
5,
to the
I
driveway.
wouldn't be able to
it
get a
would be
vehicle
2 feet
through
in the
there.
driveway.
Does that give you a better visual?
yeah,
So the width of the yard with the driveway and the shed.
where was the shed at before it was moved?
It was behind the original garage that we tore down.
yeah, there was a 2-car garage when I bought the house.
And that was in compliance, that the setback for that shed was fine.
At that point, yes.
And then your contractor moved the shed, And then it became not in compliance.
Right, well, at that point, we thought it was 3 feet.
Okay.
The
But your
setback.
contractor should have known that one with setbacks.
Okay.
And
But it was, I mean, the reason it was moved was because we tore down the existing two-car garage and the new garage that we have.
And we put it there because we were already starting to have problems.
There's many ordinances of other townships in the area are 3 feet from the property line. So 3 feet from the property line is very common for people with putting sheds up in other townships.
Okay.
We have a zoning ordinance that requires 5.
Right.
Building code looks at 3 before you start rating the exterior wall or protecting the exterior wall.
Okay.
So 3 feet by the building code is not a problem.
It's not a problem?
By the ordinance, it is.
Seems to be the norm elsewhere. So if
Yes.
the contractor
3
was
feet.
local,
Michigan building code is 3 feet from the property line before we start worrying about the exterior fire resistive rating. But
We're
you
also-
can see that's a garden shed. It's a decorative garden shed.
And it's a garden shed. It's where she keeps her lawnmower, and her push mower, and her clippers, and
But why is your barn so big and hers so little? I thought
Well,
this
don't
was a
even get into
50-50
that.
city.
well, she does get the first 48 feet upstairs is a big one.
I'm just kind of going back to the pergola piece for a sec, guys. So the setback, and of course, you know, we kind of talked about the pergola a little bit. It doesn't count under the square footage anyway, right? We talked about not really technically being a roof. I guess my question, it's not something that needs to be inspected, right? If you put up a pergola, there's no building permits. There's none.
Over 200 square feet we do.
Over 200 square feet, okay. And the other question I have is, how common is it to see a pergola
That big? Not often.
or positioned in a way that is?
Position? Not often.
Okay.
This backyard is not often.
it is very compact with the width of the lot.
And there again, we put the pergola up to make something decorative to block out the problem next door. I mean, it was.
We're not here to.
It was just.
We're looking at the merits of
I know.
what's here.
I
We're not here to
I'm
talk
just
about-
saying that's the reason why the pergola was put up.
In because I know there's some debate on the fence position and the position of some of these structures. The 2 feet, is that off the fence or is that per the survey?
I believe the 2 feet is where it comes to the house, and
The 2
2
foot
and a
was
half
the
foot
side
from the
yard.
main building for the
Right.
pergola is from the house.
From the house to
2.5 from the house.
The pergola,
to the pergola. And again, we have not a real solid roof and not a solid wall.
and then the 2
Right.
foot side yard setback is for the existing pergola and shed, because they are connected from the property line.
Okay.
So that would be the rear of where the shed is here to the property line is only, where we require 5 is only 2 foot. And if you look at, let me go back, the layout they provided, you can see the garden shed is 10, there's the lean-to, and then there's the 2 foot setback where they require 3 right here from the property line.
We need an additional 2 feet. It's 3 feet from the fence now, and we need an additional 2 feet setback to make it so that it's
That's what
offsets
they're
the
requesting,
5
is their 2
feet.
foot.
They have 3 feet.
Yeah, we
Yes,
have
they-
3 feet.
They have 3 feet, which is the
They
building.
do have it
code.
labeled,
is-
my air. You see the 3 foot here they have, and then that's the 2 foot setback they're requesting.
The
Sorry, my
variance
air.
request,
And-
yeah.
Yes.
And then the other one is the 7.6, where
here.
it's supposed to be, 10 from a building.
Setback
And
from the
again,
house.
that's where we worry about the spread of fire from one structure to another structure. So the chance of a pergola getting caught on fire would be very minimal. I mean,
Yeah, in the pergola, the purlins hang over 14 inches. So
And that's
take 14
And
inches
this is
off
the
and you're-
area of the pergola.
And that's part of it, and
House.
this pergola is, I think, throwing a wrench into everyone this evening here. If it was a
Looking
deck,
at it as a structure.
yeah, if it was a deck, it would be attached to the house. We wouldn't be having this conversation
Right.
about
Normally then
setbacks.
look at a
It's a
main
wooden structure that's attached to your house or very close to your house.
But I designed gardens, and this was our design.
And I can see the merits. I understand the 3-foot building code requirement, and I think we're the odd ones out at 5 foot, which I was unaware of till tonight, that we're unique in that requirement.
So looking at this again, it says we need a 2.5 for the main building.
Or the
But if I'm
pergola.
looking at this,
This
yeah.
is the pergola area. Can you see me?
Yeah,
down there?
yeah.
This is the pergola, and they have 7 foot 6 inches to here, and they require 10
To the closest
okay,
point
okay,
from the
gotcha.
screened-in porch.
from the pergola to the house.
Well, it's,
And then
it's
this
from
is
the
the-
overhang.
I'm sorry, I had to get it right, because I was thinking it's only 2.5 feet from the house.
House.
I-
Yes.
All right, my bad.
And that's going from the end of the stringers that come out, which, as Terry said, are 14 inches. And then when we measured, I was told we measured to the house, and then when I came back in, the zoning people said that you have to measure from where your gutters are.
Yeah, the closest
So that made it even narrower.
All right. If we're ready to make a motion, I think we're open to entertain it at this time regarding the shed and the pergola setbacks.
So I'll entertain one practical difficulty on the side yard setback. We could use the Michigan building code's 3 feet. Township ordinance is 5, depending on what you would do.
To maintain a driveway between the shed and the existing building, so that's the reason for a variance.
Agree on the shed. We're talking about the pergola right now.
Are we going to couple them? They're coupled
We're gonna
together,
couple
I
them
think,
together?
since they're
Okay.
attached.
Okay.
I think we have to look at them together at this point, unless we're doing some modifications. But I agree. I think the practical difficulty in terms of setback from the property line is assuming the property line is correct and is verified, which we'll look at talking about that further, is the building code requires 3 foot, which it would be in compliance with. I think, Mr. Potter, you were thinking about making a motion, perhaps?
Not on this one. I guess a comment, whatever other townships do, our township, the rule is 5 feet. So maybe that, I'm not sure if that can be included in the practical difficulty, but 3 feet is okay because that's what the state building code allows, even though the township wants 5 feet. I don't know if that
I think we
qualify as
I think we can include that if we bring it to a motion here for a vote either direction. We can bring a motion either way. A motion can fail. There's several ways we can go about this.
I've got 2, right? So the building code being 3 feet versus township ordinance of 5, and if you're not, if you don't have somebody that knows about that at the time you're moving that, no one's going to know. In addition to that, with regards to the position of both shed and the pergola, you could also talk about how close it is to the driveway, and the amount of room that would be required is not there to be able to get the 2.5 feet extra, or it wouldn't get you the proper distance from the house, right? So that could be the other argument you could make, in addition to, we kept talking about that gray area with the pergola. That could be
I was going to say, that would be
the pergola and the garden shed.
Correct.
Because of the
Yeah,
driveway,
just
you can't pull it out.
basically consider it one unit.
And in terms of the pergola itself, I think we're in that same area with accessory buildings. If we're not technically considering it a building, there's a little bit different standard I think it falls in terms of setbacks and requirements for placement. I equate it to a deck almost. You put a wooden deck right next to your house or attach it to your house. This is not much different in that sense.
When I look at decks, if it's attached to the main building, then it has to meet main building setbacks. If it's on a pool as an accessory structure, I get accessory setbacks. So 5 feet from the property line, that's how I do my decks.
When I put my deck on around the pool, I measured and I even actually gave myself an extra foot just in case, you know, a new homeowner next door moves in and has it resurveyed. I had some leeway to make sure. But what I'm seeing here is a lot of this is, and granted, I know we're talking about pergolas, and I wouldn't have known the whole deal with the pergolas and 200 square foot or anything like that, but some of this is self-created by moving the building over and then attaching a pergola. It is self-created mess.
I also look at that. For as big as the lot is, it is very narrow.
Yes. It's only 70 wide.
So I mean, it's pretty narrow to be able to get all of this particular items in here right in a way that would conform here. But I also think about, you know, the driveway is also a consideration. You know, if you move that garden shed anywhere else, where would you put it? You know, it would no longer be a garden shed. It would have to be way back, right? I don't know. But I also think about the building code. The building code's the other factor. It's Michigan building code's 3 feet, not 5. So depending on which contractor you have out there, they could be going by Michigan building code. Well, they'd be correct everywhere except for Bedford Township. That's also a consideration. You know, if you got a guy that's from Dundee or Ida or something like that, maybe they don't consider that an issue, right? Those are still the two items that I'm thinking are practical difficulties. There are the position of the garden shed to the driveway, and then also the building code being 3 feet.
No, I concur with that. I think at this point we're ready to make a motion. I think I know the direction we're going, but we just need the motion to move forward and bring it to a vote.
All right, I'll make a motion.
I'll do it.
Go for it, man.
I'll make a motion that we approve for 5802-620-009-10, a 2-foot side yard setback variance for existing pergola and shed, and a 2.5-foot side back variance for existing pergola from the main building. Looking at just the width of the lot and the driveway and where the existing shed is, and also the Michigan Building Code is 3 feet, to misinterpret that Bedford Township is 5. Looking for any friendly amendments.
I'd like to go ahead again and add to this, just making sure that we comply with all building inspection and code requirements moving forward with any existing construction that's there to make sure it's compliant.
Should we also add the maximum, or is that good enough from the first approval? Okay.
Mr. Lake.
Maximum of additional square footage at this point.
Right. We're at the max. Nothing else can be added to this, and we'll accept your friendly amendments.
Anything for Mr. Gore, Mr. Potter you'd like to add?
We had we're including the driveway, the presence of the driveway in there in the limited space.
I did say that. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll support it.
All right, support from Mr. Potter. If you could, Ms. Rector, we'll go ahead and take it to a vote.
Mr. Helm,
Aye.
Mr. Potter,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Yes.
Mr. Gore,
Aye.
Mr. Dersch.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you. Moving down to the third group of variances we're going to consider here is the plus or minus 2.5-foot fence variance for a portion of the existing privacy fence, as well as it looks like they're willing to construct some additional privacy fence on the north side of the property in the rear yard. To clarify for the board's understanding, there's no issues with front yard height or fencing. We're not in that realm of question.
No, it's just in the backyard, from where the pergola starts and goes to the back of the portion of the property.
Part of the request was to leave that metal barn
Oh, yeah.
siding in the
Yeah,
front
and
yard
I think
as a decorative front
Yeah,
yard.
the decorative
So that's
fencing.
part of the fence.
we'll
It is
cover
part of
that
the fence.
separately.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd like to.
That is only
Yeah,
in
I
the
think
front
we
yard.
do need to cover that
Yeah,
separately.
I'd like to cover that one separately, I think, and just look at the height variance. And I'll take the lead on it. As Mr. Potter said, I think we had something similar come up in May. I was trying to remember the time frame. I'm glad he reminded me of where we granted a variance for an 8-foot fence. You know, it was a similar situation where I think the practical difficulty, if Mr. Goldsmith can help me out, was just the right to enjoy your property and have privacy in your own backyard. I think that's kind of what we leaned on for that one.
If you're referring to the one with the pool, is that the one you're referring to, or?
Was there
One was, it was an elevated versus a lower, and they needed that variance to bring it up so there would be privacy.
Yeah, there was, on that one, you had some unique elevation differences to deal with. One lot was a lot higher, of a much higher elevation as a different lot, so a 6-foot fence was insufficient to provide privacy for the pool. So there, and as I have told you for years and years, each case should be measured on its own merits and decided on its own merits. That one, there was an elevation difference. You've had other ones before where neighbors were not getting along, dealing with noise issues, that
That's
sort
the
of
one
thing.
I'm thinking of.
Yes, I thought you were. And so a practical difficulty was offered to alleviate noise and provide privacy. So that particular variance that you're referring to, and none of those in my mind provide precedent because, again, you look at and measure each variance request based on its own merits. So, but that was the other one. That was the other one. That was
That's the
based
one I'm
almost
thinking of.
entirely on noise, neighbor issues, neighbors not getting along, providing a barrier so that each could reside peacefully on their own side of the boundary line.
I guess, again, for the board's clarification, I see we've got the decorative fence definition here, Ms. Rector. Is there a requirement for regular fencing that's considered privacy as a construction standard, or what we're looking for and what that can be?
Are you talking about the rear yard or what they have in the front yard?
Or rear yards?
The rear yard.
I was concerned about some of the photos we saw of their items being used as.
I will let the applicant
That's,
speak,
I
but I
have
believe
those photos up.
I believe those shutters in that, I believe some of that has been taken down. Some of these pictures, I believe that we have on here are what are existing. But I will let them clarify that because I did not go back out after this on the site visit with the ordinance department. But I believe when I visited the site, this is the fencing that I visual.
Okay, do we have a requirement of what side yard fencing is supposed to be or rear yard fencing, or is it just left up for aesthetics, or?
Well, we actually even allow chain link in.
But in
You
answer,
allow,
in answer to your question,
think
the
chain
shutters were removed.
But I don't know the construction. I
Yeah,
don't know if there's a
materials of construction is
requirement.
what we're
It
asking.
states, let me read it to you. Give me 1 second.
Because typically you'll see chain link with slatting or wood picket,
I looked into this a little bit because I put a fence in my neighborhood, right? I don't, each neighborhood might have a deed restriction, but that's not the realm of the township. So that could be where it could be somewhat misconstrued over what the construction needs to be, but.
While we're moving through this, is there any additional questions from the board for the applicant on this item, or any other discussion we want to have?
So my big issue was with this hodgepodge fence with wood shutters and whatnot
That was all
is
removed.
not going to fly with me.
No, it's not even there. When the ordinance people came out to the property and we talked, it was removed like they asked me to.
Okay, and I know that we required, they'll call it the nice side of the fence to face the neighboring property. I assume we've got some other standards of what that material should consist of.
If I could get it to turn in the packet, I would change it so you could read it with me. But general requirements for fencing, our construction shall not require a building permit. All fences shall be constructed of wood, metal, masonry, molded synthetic material, or other similar construction material. All fences shall be constructed so that the structure, membranes, posts, poles, and braces shall be within the perimeter of the picket, planks, or other fencing material. Fences may be located along a property line. However, no fence may be located within the road right-of-way. No fence shall occupy the clear visual, which is established by Section 1910. The height of a fence shall be measured from the established grade of the land on which the fence is located. The grading, mounding, or clearance of land shall not be permitted to increase the established grade in conjunction with the installation of a fence. Fences shall not contain barbed wire, razor wire, or similar sharp pointed objects or electric current or electrical charge, except as specifically provided in this section, and that refers to more of agricultural or industrial. And fences shall be maintained in good repair and neat condition. Any fence that endangers life or property, is not in good repair, or is not being maintained in a neat condition shall be deemed a public nuisance. Chain link fence of any type shall not be deemed decorative material for the purpose of this section. And then that's where it refers to chain link shall not be located in the front yard as a decorative type fence.
So the thing, the vertical and horizontal members, that one statement is the only thing I think they're really asking about, right?
Right.
We determine it to be the good side's got to be out.
So those would be the
Horizontal
members of the fencing.
Yeah.
Did it state that in the ordinance?
Yeah, she read it real quick.
Yes, it's all fences shall be constructed so that all structure membranes, posts, poles, or braces shall be within the perimeter of the picket, planks, or other fencing material. And the way we explained it is when you put a fence up, the flat side should be facing the neighbors because the post is where you
The post and
attach
the
fence.
horizontal members are
Yes.
inside.
They gotta be- yep.
I don't know if I can.
That's the only thing we really have that.
But, I'm looking at this fence again.
I'm sorry, I was going to try to go right here so you can see
Yeah.
that this is more of like a
Lattice.
It's lattice.
style
It's a
fence,
lattice
where
is what it
wood.
is.
And you can see a better photo of it there.
It looks the same on both sides.
No, that's actually the backside. And when the ordinance officers came out and spoke with us, they said that we would have to cover the backside, which we told them, once we go through all the variants and stuff, we have no problem putting lattice on the backside, so it looks like the front side.
So that's the backside with the post exposed.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
That would be what we would consider like the post of the braces should be within their property. The neighbors should not have to, whether you put up a 6-foot privacy fence, you have the post where the flat side of the fence attaches, you would want these items facing your property and not the neighbors.
How is that going to work when you go to put lattice on the backside if you'll be on their property having a?
No, there's 3
room.
feet. There's 3 feet between the fence and the property line. So we've got room to get between there and do it.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
A permit is not required for a fence, but if we do get a call, we do encourage residents not to put a fence on a property line because you have to still be able, if you had to paint the fence or you have to mow or weed, use your weed whacker on it, you would definitely want to be able to maintain on your property. So we don't say you can't put it on a property line, but we encourage residents to not put it so you can maintain on both sides for any additional maintenance of the fence should you need to take a panel down or if it needs to be painted.
Yeah, we still have room to get behind and work on the fence.
So you could either do lattice or vertical boards, decorative fencing like a
It would be lattice, just like we did on the front side.
Lattice on the back side.
The simplest.
Yeah.
They can see the same thing we do.
And that picture really makes it look extremely narrow because you're not getting the view of the split rail fence that's adjacent to it. So when you do look at that picture, it looks really skinny.
So really, a practical difficulty on this one is like all the other ones before, is just to keep somewhat of the peace. I mean, you can grant a variance for an 8.5-foot fence, and all they got to do is get a 9-foot pole to put a camera on. Same problem.
Yeah, I think we had a similar impasse last time regarding how to proceed with such a variance. In your experience, you've seen how this plays out. And
Oh my God, yeah.
sometimes not for the better.
No.
Mr. Chair. I just would like to also remind the board that they are asking to add 72 feet of additional 8.5-foot tall fencing to make sure we're very descriptive of what is going to be the determination should the board's desire be to either grant or deny, so they know if they move forward with the additional panels, what will be required.
And thank you, Ms. Rector. For the applicants, does that take us to this tree line that we're seeing in this aerial photo, or we don't want to grant a variance for X number of feet and find out in a year you need another 10 feet?
No, basically it goes to the tree line where the trees are at. There's a chain link fence that starts there and goes to the back, and that's where we're going to go. It's just back there to
There's a little dog kennel on the neighbor's yard, right about,
Yes.
right? Go farther back.
Gotta go
to the
back.
Left.
back.
Left.
Keep going, keep going.
Left.
Right
Right there's a
there.
dog kennel. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's about where the 8-foot fence would go to, I think is what they're proposing.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this area is where they're proposing. This is
Already there.
existing, and then they're proposing to extend it all the way back to here.
Well, actually, it goes about to the
It goes
middle.
about right here, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
It goes about where the garage is existing, and then they want to add all the way to the back of the tree line,
The tree line.
approximately right there.
That's basically where her gardens are and where she works.
So we want to put in there something about not to exceed, what's the total length of?
It was
8.5 foot?
72.
What is it?
It's 72. It's 9 panels.
But you
that
want
are-
to add an existing 72,
Correct.
but you want to make what's there now 8.5 feet, correct? Or just a
Yes.
total 72 feet?
No, we're adding an additional 72 feet.
Okay, but what's there now of 8.5-foot fence?
Oh, the height?
Oh, they're 8 foot.
Oh, it's 8 foot.
But you're leaving those as is. You're just going to put
Yeah,
a
we're
lattice
just-
on the backside
Yeah,
to make
Yes.
it
yeah,
decorative.
we'll build those with the
So you don't
lattice.
want 8.5 foot on the stuff that's there now?
Those won't be 8.5 foot. The only spot that's 8.5 foot is actually where the pergola's at, and that's because there's 2x8 purlings sitting on top of it, which I counted to the top of the purlings, not to the top of the fence, just so that there was no miscommunication. This will only be
8-foot fence.
8 foot.
Well, I think we went with the 8.5 just in case
A variance
the
in the-
ground changes at any place. Then if someone comes out and measures it and says,
So
you
the-
know,
I use a level. Everything's dead straight.
The request is a 2.5-foot fence height variance for a portion of an existing 8.5-foot tall privacy fence and to construct an additional 7. So there's not an existing 8.5-foot privacy fence?
I believe the pergola with the top panel these are measure about 8 feet. And they didn't know if the grade changed and if someone came out and measured. So they determined to ask for 8.5 feet to cover if any of the grade changed on the elevations
Got
because
it.
it has to be by grade.
Yeah, we didn't want somebody
On
to
the
come out
existing.
and measure in a hole and
This
find
is
out, oh, it's
existing.
8.5 feet there. And
Okay.
Yes.
We're just doing it to cover, to make sure we're safe.
But
The new
this right
fence
here-
will be 8-foot panels
Correct.
And a
mounted.
new fence.
Yeah, those are 8-foot panels, and that's what we're using.
On the new
it'll be
fence.
just like,
I think
just
we've
like
got
what's already constructed.
language in here that talks about nominal height.
Okay.
We've been through that before.
Yeah.
You know, we look at the nominal height. No one should be measuring in a low spot, trying to pick at something.
And they didn't know if they had a spot that would be a different elevation, so to cover if there was one panel that maybe, when, especially if they
We
put in the
just
new one.
wanted to cover our bases so we were safe.
I believe this is pretty close to 8 foot tall
Okay,
as it
so-
exists.
Yes.
With the,
So are we just really just saying from the bottom of the actual panel to the top of the panel is really 8 feet?
Correct.
Okay, regardless of grade?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, no, it actually is from the ground on up because not.
I'm okay with the height. I don't.
Yeah, I'm
think
fine with that.
we
We've done this
existing
before.
Nominal height and
So
if
add
they
an
put lattice on the backside.
Yeah. This is,
All right, if we're wrapped up with discussion on this item, I think we're looking for a motion to move forward with a vote on it.
I'll try, go ahead, Mr. Potter.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and make the motion that we approve a plus or minus 2.5 foot height variance for a portion of an existing 8.5 foot tall privacy fence and to construct an additional 72 feet of 8.5 foot privacy fence, all located on the north side of the property line to the rear yard for the property at 6333 Swiss Garden, Temperance, Michigan, 4812, better known as 5802-620-009-10. And the practical difficulty is to keep the peace like we've done in the past.
And I'd like to add, Mr. Potter, if you.
I'd just like to make a friendly amendment. The neighbor side, I'm going to call it the neighbor side, of the fence, existing and new, must comply with paragraph 1C of 400.1912 fences, which talks about the structure of the fence being on the applicant's side, not the neighbor side. If the applicant wants to dress up the inside, their side of the fence, that's fine, but the neighbor side of the fence should be existing and new.
So requiring them to put
Dressed
lattice
up.
on the outside.
Yes.
Yes.
Lattice or whatever the material's going to be.
I think
Just to finish, you just want a finished panel on the backside.
Yeah, per the
Backside or neighbor side,
We will
whichever.
make it lattice just so that it looks like everything else. Regardless of personalities, we want it to look good.
Yeah, and Ms. Rector will get you all this information once we get through everything here. But section 400.1912, make sure we're fully compliant with the requirements. And I'll add as well as a friendly amendment, you know, we highly recommend you get a surveyor and get it staked out before doing any construction. I don't think we can require it necessarily, but we tell anyone that's putting up a fence, get a survey and make sure it's in the right spot the first time.
Yeah, I'll accept that.
I'll support.
All right, we got Mr. Lake with support. Ms. Rector, if you could please with the vote.
Mr. Gore,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Mr. Helm,
Aye.
Mr. Potter,
Aye.
Mr. Dersch.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move to the last item on this variance request, which is requesting an interpretation of the ordinance language to permit an existing metal barn siding material to serve as a decorative fencing in a front yard, which again is found in that section 400.1912. There were some photos passed around. I think the board was able to see a little bit better idea of what that looks like up close. I know I wasn't able to get on the property and look at it. Just up close.
This metal portion right here, this is the split rail. I believe this is the neighbor's
Yes.
fencing.
Yes.
And then this is attached to a portion on their fence of the
But
front
no,
yard.
it's not attached
No, it's
to
not
the
attached to
neighbor's
the fence.
fence.
No, I mean that it's like on a
There's
wires
stakes.
type thing on your side of the
Yeah,
fence. So,
yeah,
but it
yeah,
is
we have
attached
separate
to
posts.
something. I didn't want it to make it sound like it was just what was serving, but this gives a more closer up picture of what it looks like of the actual fencing. And it is within the front yard, but behind the front building line of the home. And I do believe it meets the height requirements by ordinance. But we allow for wrought iron in the front yard. And when you read fence as considered decorative in the ordinance, a fence constructed of an ornamental material such as wrought iron, simulated wrought iron, brick or stone, or embellished wood picket fences or split rail fences. Ornamental fences do not include chain link fencing with or without woven slats or wood stockade style fences. When I read that, that's why I advise them that they would have to get an interpretation, because I don't read that as portion of defined as what the ordinance, and you're the only board that can waiver from the interpretation.
I was going to say, the only comment I had is I think on the photos we saw is that this may not be compliant with 400-19121C. It looks like the T-posts and the ugly side of the fence, we'll call it for lack of a better term, is on the outside, and the neat side that should be facing the neighboring properties and street is on the inside.
So put 2 layers of metal, one on each side of the fence.
Oh, he's
A
talking.
decorative fence, to put another piece of metal on the other side to enclose the posts?
Oh.
Or move the
Well,
posts on your side?
We could put the posts
Oh,
on
yeah,
there.
we
So
could-
they're just skinny little metal posts. They're not, we could paint them brown if that, and they would blend right in.
But I also think the board should take 2 other things, right? This is to stop the neighbor from blowing grass and leaves in their yard.
Correct.
But then also from their standpoint, they shouldn't be composting on the back side of this fence, right? It should be mowed or maintained in a.
There's only like less than a foot in there.
Well, but I'm just saying, if she's concerned about what you're doing on that side of the fence, that shouldn't.
Well, that's actually behind the pergola and the back fence, and I've done it 3 years in a row, and as you know, you can put leaves down and they'll look like this, and then come springtime, you're going to have a pile like this, and all it does is it's a great weed barrier, so you don't have to weed the area, and there's nothing unsightly about it.
So
No, that wasn't, yeah.
maybe this is my question for legal counsel and for planning department. So when I read this, make an interpretation of decorative for the ordinance. I mean, this feels like a precedent for the township in a way. This feels a much bigger weight regarding this particular request, this variance, right? Am I overreacting to this request, or am I kind of on base?
Well, I do not think you're overreacting. I think you are on base, because our zoning ordinance and state law allows the Board of Zoning Appeals to interpret the zoning ordinance or to interpret a decision of a zoning official or a building official. So your interpretation of this ordinance will not only affect this particular variance and request, but others in the future, because it will have been determined that the Board of Zoning Appeals for Bedford Township has determined that this type of fence construction meets the definition or fits the definition of a decorative fence. So got to be careful.
So thank you for.
And I would agree with that, and that's why I advised them that they would have to bring it to the board, because I interpret it as it would not be considered under the language of decorative fencing by the language of the ordinance.
So that therein lies my concern. While it's done in a beautiful way and it looks wonderful, my concern is if we open up that box, what does it mean for the rest of the township? That's my concern. Where, some people might do something in a way that looks very nice. Others might take it, hey, it's a really cheap and inexpensive way for me to put up something crazy in my front yard. And I'm more worried about the latter. That would be my one concern about us interpreting this tonight and making a determination without thinking about the ramifications.
Mr. Potter, I heard someone down there.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's better to approve a variance for this particular instance, rather than an interpretation which would impact other potential similar instances all over the township. Because the definition of decorative, the first sentence says ornamental materials such as, and then they identify a bunch of things. You might stretch that or interpret it as meaning such as, but not limited to, the following examples. But then the next sentence, it says ornamental fences do not include chain link, but in particular wood stockade type fences, which is more of a solid, continuous, I think, anyway. Or does wood stockade have gaps in it?
No.
We see shadow box and stockades.
Okay. What the applicant's looking for is something solid.
They want something solid to stop grass and leaves from being blown onto their property.
The decorative fence definition, in one sentence, you could say it's allowed, but the second sentence the second sentence indicates as an example, ornamental fences do not include wood stockade type fences, which could be more of a solid fence.
Should they be able to leave that fence is the question.
Yeah, but would a variance in this case be, if we were leaning towards leaving what's there without any, with the only changes of making the outside
smooth,
neighbor side better looking than the
Right, but
would that, I mean, if we just did issued a variance for that, then that would be for that particular instance and not.
They say this
other
is kind of
property in
special
the
because of the
township.
way the rusted metal is. You can't just go buy the rusted metal, right? So part of the interesting looking at this fence is the rusty metal. I mean, you can't go to Menards and buy that, I don't think.
No.
It didn't look rusted to me when I saw it.
It doesn't look rusted?
It is.
To me.
It's very rusted.
Really?
It is, and then you have to decide which side do you like better. I mean, it's pretty much I'd have to go to the neighbor and go, which side do you like better? Which wouldn't matter to me because I like both sides of it.
Well, the only thing that our ordinance requires, as I understand it, is whatever structure holds the fence up is supposed to be on the applicant's side, and the smooth side.
It's not a problem.
Oh, that's not a problem.
We can
be
change
on
that.
on the neighbor side. Our question is just what is that material going to be allowed?
Well, and the request is an interpretation of decorative, right? So if we make
I
an
don't know if we want to
interpretation,
make a.
I don't want to, but that's the request, right?
Well, can we
Change the request.
Do we have to tackle that tonight?
Do we have to tackle it as a request
Yeah,
for interpretation, or can we tackle it as a variance? Make our own decision here at the meeting to look at it as a variance.
Mr. Gore?
So I'm fine with that fence strictly because of the whole grass and leaf issue. I mean, everybody knows why it's being blown on the other neighbor's side. I mean, anybody that's had neighbors, I've been next door to my neighbors for 26 years, and when I cut my grass, my chute is always facing into my yard, okay? But I've seen it in my career. I've had people call the police because I've snowblowed my driveway, or somebody snowblowed their driveway and blew it onto their neighbor's driveway. Okay? People call the police for stuff like that. So to give them peace of mind, if the neighbors are going to continue to just face the chute that way towards the neighbor's yard and blow it into the flower beds, I'm fine with the fence.
Well, I'm fine with a fence, absolutely. What I'm not fine with is the interpretation that a piece of metal can be used as a decorative, right? Because my fear is not what they're doing. My fear is what other people would do with that interpretation.
Right. Like you said, what we decide here is going to have ramifications for
Right. That's my bigger concern. I'm not worried about how these two are going to utilize that metal fencing. It's
Just what
other
is the
people might
fence?
do. Yeah.
So it sounds like then if we were to interpret this as not being compliant or not meeting the intent of the ordinance, the applicant could turn around and say, okay, we'll pull the metal out and we'll put wood slats in there instead.
Well, there's a lot of options, right, in the ordinance to do a decorative fence in the front, right? So there's still plenty of options. I'm not concerned.
Something solid.
I'm sure they're intelligent people. They'll find a new solution, right? The question is, can we allow the metal?
Right.
As a something that we determine to be decorative at the township level, not just this individual instance.
Because what they consider decorative, what we consider decorative, what they consider decorative, everybody's going to have a different, so yeah, we're going to have to.
To be very careful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion of Mr. Lake here that I think the merits are there in this particular instance for this fence and this installation, and it is aesthetically pleasing. But again, the interpretation aspect is where we're potentially opening a can of worms where what we consider aesthetically pleasing that may meet this definition may not truly be.
So can you change the wording to where it's not an issue?
And I'll get corrected if I'm incorrect here. I think where we're at is if the interpretation were to remain as the ordinance is written, that decorative is defined, you would have to replace it with some other material that meets the requirements of the ordinance. And the metal would have to be taken down and replaced.
Well, let's talk about that here. What, rather than say they're smart people and they'll figure it out, what would be?
What would you consider decorative then?
Yeah. What do we have in the ordinance?
Yeah, there's a definition in here regarding.
The definition says wrought iron. Wrought iron will not keep leaves and grass out. Wrought iron will not keep the sheriff out of the driveway.
Well, unfortunately, and we're talking about front yards here, right?
I know.
Mm-hmm. Decorative. Our ordinance does not allow fences of 3.5 feet or taller than 3.5 feet in a front yard. They're decorative for a reason. They're not meant to keep people out or animals or things of that nature.
Right, and this is just the same height as their split rail fence.
Which, again, if
actually it's
actually
below
most of it's only half the distance, only half the height.
Yeah, if you
that
go to
meets
the
definition of decorative in the sense of the ordinance and is therefore compliant with what's required.
Yeah, we're not talking about the distance, the height. It's only the materials, really. That's the debate, right? But yeah, I mean, there's lots of other options that could be something like that, right? I've seen people with, I'm just using it as an example, vinyl fencing at the same height in their front yard, right? There's options such as that. And I think it looks pretty. My biggest concern would be what other people would do with metal in their front yard.
Yeah, again, not as anyone to give direction on how to build or what to build. I've seen vinyl fencing before that's decorative in front yards, and it's low maintenance, easy to take care of, and it still provides that blocking feature, we'll call it, better than a split rail wood or other materials of construction. But again, we're looking at the definition of what's decorative. Mm-hmm. It's not that the fence can't be there; it's the materials of construction and the aesthetics.
You could do a 3-foot privacy fence. The dog-eared style.
Yeah, true.
Okay. Where this brick or stone would be you need a foundation, but
costly, but
yeah, it's an option that's there.
There are options.
Yeah, you could definitely have a stone facade. That
or another option is if we interpret it to not allow the fencing that's there, could the applicant come back at a later time with another variance request for this particular instance, allow that?
They could, yeah.
Not saying that. No guarantee that we'd approve it, but I don't know. I guess I just want to identify what the options are, or at least some of them, so that we're not leaving the applicant hanging.
So Phil, if we take no action, then it remains the same, the status quo, the ordinance is the ordinance, and this would not be considered a decorative fence, or do we have to take some action?
That's why I asked for interpretation.
I believe we actually had two different interpretations. I think I said it was a decorative fence, and the ordinance officer, I believe, is the one that said it was not decorative.
And when
It's
I
roofing
read,
material.
and when I read the ordinance, the definition of fence decorative, I interpret it as it's not considered decorative fencing. So that's why they asked for interpretation, because it doesn't define it as that.
It's a roofing material, it's not a fencing
It's roofing material.
Then yet I've had another fence in the township that's roofing material installed, and it had metal on the top and bottom that supported it, and then it was actually metal in supporting structure. It's beautiful, but it's truly roofing material, but you wouldn't know it's roofing material, right? It's from an industrial roofing
That a
guy.
side
But
yard
this
or a
is-
backyard?
It was actually the backyard.
Okay.
But the neighbors didn't complain about it.
But that's the same as a vinyl fence.
Correct.
You got a
Yeah,
structure.
no, if they put,
beam at
if
the top and
they
bottom
put a piece of trim on the top and a trim on the bottom and made them horizontal supports and capped the top and bottom, it would look no different than just a regular fence. So this is horizontal without top and bottom supports, but anyway. Just looking for help.
Yeah, the only thing I'll maybe say to that is I think our backyard and side yard are a little more liberal in what we allow in terms of decorative or fencing materials as opposed to a front yard. Is that correct?
The ordinance is written, I would interpret it the same way.
So the challenge you have is the way this variance request was framed. And it was framed to ask you for an interpretation of an existing zoning ordinance. And your task is to determine, as a Board of Zoning Appeals, whether this material that's used in this particular application meets the definition of a decorative fence pursuant to the existing zoning ordinance. So it's not requesting a variance from the zoning ordinance to allow the application of this particular material in a front yard setback, but it's rather asking you to actually interpret the zoning ordinance. That's the, I guess, the importance of you determining whether this particular material meets the definition of the term decorative.
And
go.
If we were to allow this material, interpret the ordinance as this type of material is allowed, do we lose the ability to, or does the township lose its ability to say, well, this kind of metal siding is okay, but this kind of metal siding is not okay? We lose that.
Correct.
So,
well,
trashy looking metal. No, I'm just saying. I don't. You know, or am I splitting hairs?
The township board is the legislative body and is the only body that can adopt a zoning ordinance or amend a zoning ordinance, and it requires a very specific procedure that a zoning ordinance amendment has to be considered by the Planning Commission. There has to be a public hearing. The Planning Commission makes a recommendation, and then the Township Board, as the legislative body, determines to either adopt that zoning ordinance amendment or reject that zoning ordinance amendment. So if you, I've been listening to every word very carefully. If you were to make a motion to grant this variance request, I would simply ask that you limit it to this particular application and specifically state that For this application, based on what you see, you believe this to be a decorative fence, but only for this application and for this application alone, and not to be considered dispositive on any other variance that might come before you, or request for interpretation that might come before you. I would limit it to this case and this case alone.
And can we do that limited on the other end of it, that limited to this case only, we do not feel that this is considered a decorative fence?
Yes. Yeah, you could, if a motion was made and your interpretation collectively as a board was that this does not meet this particular fence does not meet the definition of decorative in this application, you could do exactly the reverse as you're suggesting, Joe.
And that's the way I'm leaning.
But that would mean that this fence has to be replaced, removed, changed.
Not if you determine this to be good in this situation, because the color of the metal and the way it is installed and the way it's landscaped and the way it looks.
So we're granting it specific to this property.
Right.
You said application, properties.
I can tell you
Which is similar to other things,
the
it's just-
shutters and the doors that they installed, I myself didn't have a problem with it because it looked neat from their side, but from the other side, it didn't look good, right? So.
They could make a motion to deny it. So that they could go either way.
Sorry, I was getting clarification.
So I understand that we can, we're asked to make a interpretation, and we could interpret that it does not meet the requirement of a decorative fence per paragraph, whatever. And then we could also, somebody could make a motion to approve a variance for this material to be used in the front yard as a decorative fence for this
property
only, and not to be construed as having an impact on paragraph such and such of decorative fence. Complicated.
If you're going to do it, I would suggest you do that. At least it limits your consideration and your interpretation to this particular property only, in this particular situation only.
And I would just guide then to the language where it says for the analysis, request for interpretation of the ordinance, and that they're asking it to permit the existing metal barn and the siding to serve as fencing in the front yard. If you're interpreting it and make a decision that it's not decorative, then I wouldn't interpret it decorative for this specific site, but that you were, if your desire is to allow it, then to permit it for this location only.
So we're just permitting it as is, not calling it decorative. We're not assigning a term to it. Okay. And since it's a interpretation of ordinance, is a practical difficulty required for us to make a motion in this instance, or is it not required?
Not required. This structure, I'll call it a structure, in all other respects meets the ordinance with respect to height, placement, etc. Really only dealing with material here within a front yard setback.
Yeah, I think the only issue we see is just the placement of the posts and what side's facing out that would need to be corrected if we agree to leave it in place.
Yep, you could make that a condition.
Is this all one action, or is it two separate?
Motions? Are you talking about?
Can we, is it all, can we do it all in one motion?
Yeah.
In one?
Yes, one motion.
Well, that makes sense.
And I think, Bob, if you're going to do this, right, or Mr. Potter, sorry.
That's good.
I think the way you can interpret that metal barn siding is not decorative, but in this particular instance, we consider it to be something to that effect if we're going to interpret it long-term, right?
In this particular instance, we can interpret it as approved fencing material. We don't call it.
Instead of saying approved, we could just say decorative in this particular instance.
I don't know if we want to.
Can't say
I don't know if we want to say
Oh,
decorative.
no, we don't.
Can't
Yeah,
use
we can't.
decorative. Screening,
Just approved
screening material.
approved fence.
Or just approve, yeah.
I'll make a motion. The heck, we can start this. I make a motion
Who determines which is best?
that
That's not an issue, just the stakes.
the interpretation of the ordinance language would not permit the existing metal barn siding material to serve as decorative fencing in the front yard of, oh boy, (6333) Swiss Garden, Temperance, Michigan, property number 5802-020-00910. However, for this particular installation, the existing fencing material is approved for this particular instance and this instance only, not to be construed as applying to any other property in the township. I guess that's it. Oh, the support structure needs to be moved from the backside to the applicant side. Is that
I was
cover-
I was just gonna add, just all other aspects need to be in compliance with the applicable section of fencing in our ordinance. And again, we'll reiterate that this is in no way interpreting decorative to include this material on, it's specific to this property only in this installation.
Does that make sense? Is there any friendly amendments?
Directors.
Any other?
I just have a question. So when you're talking about the outside of the fencing, are you allowing them to put more of the metal fencing on the backside, or do you want them to bring the bracing to the inside of the fence? Are you allowing them to?
Either way.
Okay, as long
way,
as that
whatever-
there is a solid
whatever they
side facing
choose,
the
as
neighbors.
long
Okay.
as the-
I just want to make sure that that's
Yeah.
if that's what you're
That's a good
interpreting.
point.
Because technically we said they can't add to it by the way
Well, they're not adding length or height or.
You still wouldn't be allowed to add material to the backside, I think is what Ms. Rector was getting at.
And we don't have any more to add to the back.
So you'd be flipping it. And,
Just
and
being
again,
honest.
as a friendly amendment too, I was like, make sure there's verification of property line and survey work done to make sure that where you put it is the correct spot. And as we discussed, there's no practical difficulty needed to be determined in this instance of what we're looking at here.
Phil, does that cover any impact on?
As best you can, yes. I think you stated it, that you were, I don't need to add any more. As best you can, it was, the motion is fine.
It's not to, I don't know.
I think
Where the definition of decorative fence, it doesn't, I don't see a, oh,
400,
402, I know, should I refer to that it shall not have any, this decision shall not have any impact on,
I think you defined it as that you're not interpreting it, that it wouldn't be permitted as a decorative fence in the front yard, but that you're allowing it for this site, specific parcel address.
In this site alone.
Yes.
correct.
I would like one more clarification. Since the applicant advised that they have no more of that metal fencing, would you allow any other solid fencing for them or to bring the,
Well, could
I don't know
the,
what you actually have up behind.
posts-
It's just like wire posts, isn't it?
It's just,
I don't know if you know what it looks like on the other side, so I'm just going to say that that's
well,
why this
it's
is on this side.
it's rustified on one side and it's rustified on the other side, so it's just,
It basically looks the same on both sides. The only difference is just the posts that we put it in with. It was easy, quick to do it that way.
That's what the
and this may
ordinance
not have.
requires.
The posts over.
Yeah, the
Sorry?
posts need to be on your side
Correct.
of the
Not a problem.
And that's not
That's
a
what we're
problem.
asking.
That's why I want to make sure that you only had posts and that when you put, I didn't want you to put whatever's on the other side on your side and then you, it's
No,
not what you're desiring.
no, I agree that the posts have to be on my
Okay,
side.
that's why I want to make sure it's
Yeah,
shown.
no,
I was
We'll
only,
put posts on our side and take them out on that side. That's not an issue.
Just one clarifying for Mr. Goldsmith. Future repair replacement, does that mean it has to comply with the ordinance at that time? Or could it be replaced in kind?
If this, I would state it, if this fence is ever replaced by the property owners, that it would need to comply with the definition of decorative that's stated in the ordinance.
How about like kind material?
I think.
No.
Go that far.
No.
No.
I was leaning towards that personally. That's why I asked the question, is I think we do want to add that if Mr. Potter's okay that any future maintenance or changes to this fence, other than what we're asking you to do with moving the posts, must comply. You will have to use new material that meets the requirements of the zoning.
And I would agree with that only because the variances stay with the property. If they were to then not live at the property any longer and sell, we would want, if the new homeowner might not keep this as maintained.
we're not going anywhere.
So I think if we're good with all that and everyone's on the same page with amendments, we're looking for support to bring it to a vote. Or do we have support? Nicolette, no? Okay. Well,
I'll support.
Mr. Helm, okay, Ms. Rector, if we could with the vote, please.
Mr. Potter,
aye.
Mr. Helm,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Mr. Gore,
No.
Mr. Dersch.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. You guys go ahead and return to your seats out there.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and open up one last time for public comment with name and address for the record. If there's anyone else that would like to come up at the end of the meeting here. If not, we're going to move right into board and staff comments, starting at my right. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to board and staff comments.
Reminder, the deadline for the December meeting is going to be November 13th. So I will send an email out should we had a couple inquiries on a variance, but I will let you know as soon as possible. And of course, and if you're unable to attend, to please let me know so I can secure an alternate. Thank you for the hard work tonight.
Nothing.
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
Have a good Thanksgiving holiday. Well, we won't meet before then, and hopefully we see each other in December before Christmas and the end of the year.
Very good. No other comments. Thank you.
I'll keep my comments to myself on this one.
All right, we'll go ahead and look for a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Support needed.
Support.
Mr. Potter, Mr. Helm. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, hearing none, motion carried, meeting adjourned.